Hey guys, welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on Yanasa TV. So a lot of people have been asking me about Hurricane Helene. Was it planned? Was it manipulated? Was it natural? I mean, there's been a lot of questions around it. And I would say this to most of those people. Let's look past all the theories, okay? Because in reality, the theories don't matter. I mean, nobody's going to have the correct theory of what happened or what went on. But what matters is why we're even having this conversation in the first place. Because a lot of people several years ago wouldn't have believed you if you said that there were these types of situations going on. On this channel, you know, last summer I spent a lot of time talking about eminent domain cases that were all connected to a massive power grid infrastructure upgrade across the United States. Some of these areas have 100-mile wide power line swaths planned, 50 miles wide, 15 miles wide, and even the 5-mile ones wide. People had a hard time believing me and called me out for misinformation, disinformation, because they just couldn't possibly fathom why you would need to have these corridors that are that wide running across the United States. It doesn't matter to them that the Department of Energy has this stuff published on their website, and you can go and read about it. They explain why they need these massive corridors. What matters to them is that it was unbelievable to them, and so therefore everything I was saying must have been fake news. But it wasn't fake. It is actual information. It's published on the website, and it blows my mind how a lot of these guys can publish these things, be frank about them, and people still don't believe it. They pass it off as some sort of strange conspiracy theory. Well, you guys better start believing it, because it's true. It's happening. It's published. Over the summer, I covered numerous eminent domain cases across the United States that were all attached to this. And people are losing equity in their homes. People are losing a lot because of this green energy infrastructure upgrade. People who didn't think they had anything to lose from it are losing to it. People who were told that they would only gain from it are losing to it. Think about it. People in Maryland, for example, were complaining that their home values plummeted. Contracts on their homes were dropped because just the simple announcement of one of these power grids going in their area. There are big changes ahead, folks. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about me. Nobody cares about the environment. This entire thing saying that it's about the environment, green energy, is just a term. It actually does not refer to saving the environment, saving the people. Think about it this way. If we were really going to do away with oil and gas, Israel striking Iran's supplies and production wouldn't mean a thing to the West. But making sure that they didn't disrupt that was extremely important to the U.S. Why? Because we are still going to be reliant on oil and gas. What this has more to do with is that we are heading into the fourth industrial revolution that takes 10 times, more than 10 times, the amount of energy consumption that we have now. So it's more or less creating a much more balanced approach, but we have to convince people that we need this massive infrastructure upgrade to do an entire switch. In the meantime, there are no plans to actually disrupt oil and gas production. The only plans are to increase the amount of energy we consume. And whether you agree with me or not, all energy comes at a cost. And that cost is about to be more than 10 times in the near future. The fact is that none of this is actually helping the planet. In fact, it is destroying it. If you look across the world, forests are being cut down for lithium and cobalt mines. When you look across the United States, national forests, which have been put in place to protect endangered species, are being turned into lithium mines without a second question or thought. They'll try and do the best they can to protect those species. But the point is that nobody cares. Nobody cares. This is the next gold rush. And you got to think about this a little bit, folks. Think about all of these gold rushes throughout history. Think about when people first came to the eastern seaboard of the United States. It was rich with resources, rich with agricultural resources. Agricultural resources people in Europe hadn't seen before. This land was like the Holy Land. And there were a couple million people living here, and those people were welcoming. There were communities that worked with communities. There were settlers that worked with native indigenous communities. Everything was fine when people first arrived. But the resources were too great. The resources were too valuable. So suddenly you have disease come in and wipe out a few million people. That happened. And once that happened, it opened up the eastern seaboard. So everybody coming over had a free place to go. And then we made treaties with those people, treaties out west, but we discovered gold. And a couple oligarchs from the United States were able to actually recruit our own armies to go and remove those people from the treaties of the lands that they put them on. They were able to convince, often through misinformation to Congress, that these savages had to be removed. Why? Because they wanted the gold. And I'm not calling indigenous people savages. I'm saying that that's what they convinced Congress, to take our armies and remove these people from these areas where there were riches to be made. Well, now those riches, that gold, comes in the form of lithium, cobalt, and water. This is a very serious problem. It's a very serious problem for all of us because we all stand in the way of that. You guys all have heard about the new big lithium store that they found under the state of Arkansas. It actually spans under 6 states. It's called the Smackdown Formation, and it covers 6 states. There's enough lithium down there to power the world over 10 times, which is perfect for the Industrial Revolution, 4th Industrial Revolution, which is the artificial intelligence, technological revolution, whatever you want to call it. I've heard so many people talking about the environmental hazards of trying to get that lithium out, the technology advances we would need in mining to be able to get that lithium out. There have been a whole lot of things that people have immediately started to talk about, start to brainstorm over, but they haven't talked about the people that are living there. Why? Perhaps they already have a way of getting rid of the people. I don't know. And we're going to play a clip for you from Redacted. They had some great information on this.
All right. Well, since World War II, the United States government have been able to manipulate the weather. That's a fact. You can look it up. Since the 1960s, we've been able to control and even weaponize the weather. That's a fact. You can look it up.
We did it in Vietnam. Yeah.
Exactly. And in the 1970s, the United States Congress put forth a bill to regulate weather manipulators. That's right. In case you had some sort of a weather manipulation tool, the United States government wanted you to register it with the United States government and get a license for it. That's how much we were doing this in the United States. So we'll come back to that part of the story in a second. But first, when Hurricane Katrina destroyed New Orleans and the Gulf Coast in 2005, a lot of people got very rich. I don't know if you know that. That story hasn't really been covered or talked much about. Millionaires, in fact, were made as a result of it. Millionaires were made almost overnight as a result of this destruction. 80% of the land, of course, was destroyed in New Orleans at the time, and all the way up through the Mississippi into Biloxi and everything else was wiped away. Most of it purchased by property developers. And black residents of New Orleans at the time weren't stupid. They knew exactly what was happening to them. Here's a nice paycheck, now leave and never come back. We'll take your land. Don't worry, get out of here. Take the town of Point Cadet, a hurricane-battered blue-collar neighborhood in East Biloxi, Mississippi. Homes were totally flattened. Casinos swooped in, bought up all of the land. Casino operators snatched up tracts of land from property owners whose homes were flattened by the hurricane on August 29th, 2005. Now this area, tourist destination, right? And nice casinos, restaurants, nice pier, all of that, nice shopping and everything. No more pesky homeowners with riverfront property. Just like Maui, Lahaina, right? Where massive wildfires took out all the homes, people that lived there for well over 100 years. A lot of generational families in those areas now just wiped away. Perfect tourist destination properties in that area. The people that own those houses, of course, are totally inconvenient. Get out of here.
Now, if you guys want to check out the rest of that clip, please check out Redacted's page because they did a fantastic job. And there is a lot of good information in there. And I'm not trying to throw around theories or conspiracies. I'm just asking the question, how come nobody seems to be wondering what to do about all the people that are living over there? You know, North Carolina is interesting because we recently saw property insurance increase 40%. They wanted it to go up more than that, but our legislators said no, but you could do a 40% increase in some areas. And so what they did in these areas that are high possibility of having a storm impact them, they raise people's insurance rates 40%. Okay. It's only a matter of time before you start seeing insurance companies come in and say that an area is uninsurable. It gets hit too many times by storms. We can no longer insure property there. You may think that this is a far-fetched idea, but I think we're just a few storms away from it. And when it happens, what's going to happen then? When people are in an area that gets hit that's uninsured? I guess we'll find out in Western North Carolina. A lot of those people didn't have flood insurance. But my point is that the people aren't the issue. They're a nuisance. They're in the way. The resources are worth far too much money to worry about such things. I mean, the value of these metals is incredible. Look at what happened in Idaho with the cobalt mines. Suddenly you have a water curtailment on 600,000 acres of potato crops and other crops. The only benefactor in all that was the energy company. Eventually people won't be able to speak up enough. Eventually it's not going to matter. And it's not just the mining of minerals. It's not just, making way for these big power lines and solar farms to feed this giant machine brain that they want to build across the globe. What about water? I mean, there you go, data centers. Data centers consume anywhere between 300,000 gallons a day for a mid-sized data center, up to 5 million gallons a day. According to a report that was put out by JP Morgan on October 28th, 75 billion gallons of water were used for data centers in 2023. And this is growing. I mean, it's probably going to double or triple in size in the next year. Could you imagine that number of 75 billion gallons of water doubling, tripling in size? That's insane to think about. I did a video earlier this summer on a farmer in Virginia who had an eminent domain case where the county was taking his land by eminent domain to put a water intake in, then run it across the county, using eminent domain on everybody else, to a data center campus for a private developer. And that's the thing, is a lot of these developers of these power grids, of these water plants, they're all private, right? These data centers, they're private. Who benefits from all of this? Think about that. Who benefits? Do you and I benefit? Do you and I benefit from all of these data centers? Some of you are probably thinking, well, yeah, I benefit because it adds convenience to my life. I've got, things that I didn't have before. You don't benefit from it. Trust me. What you need is you need food, you need water, you need nature. And these things are destroying all of those left and right. And they're destroying them at a rate that I don't know what we would do. We're running out of water resources as it is. One of those data centers uses enough water resources to feed a city of 10 to 50,000 people, according to the JP Morgan report. 10 to 50,000 people. So for one data center, we're having to offset 10 to 50,000 people. I want you to think about that. You're in the way. You're in the way of the fourth industrial revolution, of all this growing. And it's all being done under the guise of green energy that a lot of people have bought into because it has the word green in it. It must be good for the planet. It's destroying the planet. I mean, where does all this lithium go when we put it into batteries and we dig it up out of the ground? Where does it all go? How destructive is this actually being? Regardless of what you've heard, this has nothing to do with saving the planet. You mean nothing to them. The planet means nothing to them. This has everything to do with the growth of artificial intelligence. And when they have it, they no longer need us all, right? So this is a revolution that is probably one of the most dangerous ones we've ever faced. This is the most anti-human one we've ever faced. We're the only species in the world that's trying to kill itself, starve itself out, dehydrate its neighbors. We are truly destructive in and of ourselves to ourselves. And because of all this, there's this massive, great relocation going on across the United States. And if you guys don't see it by now, you haven't been paying attention. But it's happening. It's happening again, just like it did during the times when we first came here and we moved indigenous people to where we wanted them, and we brought people in that were easy to control to take their place. Well, now we're removing those people because we no longer need them. But what we need are the resources that they're sitting on top of. We need the water from the farmers. We need the fields from the farmers for solar fields. We need the space to run these massive data corridors. I mean, we'll just call them data corridors because there's going to be more than power lines running through there. And we need it all so that we can spy on people, we can control people, we can manipulate the way they think. This is one of the scariest things that we have ever experienced in our time, and yet we've had so many people buy into it. We've had so many people buy into it in the name of the environment. They think, and they've been convinced, that this is actually helping. So my question about all of this is not so much, okay, was that storm manipulated? Was it fake? We're all asking these questions because we see what's going on, and a lot of people don't want to admit it. A lot of people want to sit back and say, no, this is crazy thinking, okay? We know that these things could happen, and the conversation is happening with more and more and more and more people because they're opening their eyes and they're seeing what's going on, and they're saying, wait a second, we are destroying the resources that we need to have to feed our population of 8 billion people, and we're giving those resources to machines that can think, that can manipulate us, that can control everything. And they can. I mean, they can manipulate you through algorithms. They do it all the time. When you put it all together, the conversations are occurring because it's actually happening. Not everything you hear is correct information. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of quote unquote misrepresented things out there. But the fact remains that this industrial revolution is occurring, it's occurring in full force, and we aren't having a say in it. We don't have a place in it in the end. There's just not enough water, there's not enough resources. And these are the types of questions that I ask myself when I head to the polls, and I hope you do too. Because I think that we need to start putting people first again. I think that we need to start putting nature and our environment first again. And it means waking up to what's actually happening, waking up to these industrial revolutions that we don't need. We don't need them to survive, but we need the resources that they're taking.